Welcome back to the Make Time for Success podcast. This is episode 214. This one is a great one, ladies and gentlemen. In this episode, you're going to hear my conversation with the amazing and lovely and warm Kelly Butler. She is the CEO of the Points Maven, and she's a real inspiration for women in midlife everywhere, especially women who are interested in adding travel to their current portfolio of activities. After a life-changing medical setback that left her temporarily paralyzed, Kelly rebuilt her life with a fresh perspective, one that prioritized unforgettable experiences and meaningful connections. She made her travel dreams come true without the hefty price tag. And in the process, she has mastered the art of using credit card points and miles to travel in luxury for nearly free. She's helped her family and her clients book over $250,000 worth of travel value, all while keeping credit scores high, avoiding credit card interest, and spending responsibly. Now, Kelly is on a mission to empower women in midlife to stop settling, to embrace adventure, and to rediscover travel in ways they never thought possible. Whether it's first-class flights to Bali, whale watching in Vancouver, or tracing family roots in Sicily, Kelly proves that the travel lifestyle you've always dreamed of is within your reach. This was just such a fun conversation to have. Kelly is full of information, insights about being an adult woman. And she's really just motivated from inside, from her deep passion for this type of work to help women to expand the possibilities in front of them. Let's go listen to this great episode together now. Hi, I'm Dr. Christine Lee, and I'm a psychologist and a procrastination coach. I've helped thousands of people move past procrastination and overwhelm so they could begin working to their potential. In this podcast, you're going to learn powerful strategies for getting your mind, body, and energy to work together so that you can focus on what's really important and accomplish the goals you want to achieve. When you start living within your full power, you're going to see how being productive can be easy and how you can create success on demand. Welcome to the Make Time for Success podcast. Hi, everyone. It is still the beginning of 2025, and in the mood of a new beginning, I thought, what gifts can I bring to my audience? And I think our guest today, Kelly Butler, is going to give us such a gift of knowledge and the gift of her personality and wisdom today. Kelly is the Points Maven, and I'm going to just, get right to it and have her explain what that title and brand means and what the points have to do with living your best life. And I am going to learn right along with you. So thank you, Kelly, for being on the show, and welcome.
Thank you, Christine. I have been so excited to be here since you and I hatched this plan last month. So here's in a nutshell what this means. So I help women in midlife who want to create a new chapter full of travel and adventure. And I help them do this for pennies on the dollar. They're usually saving on average of about 90% off the cash ticket prices for their dream bucket list destinations. And I help them do that by responsibly leveraging credit card welcome offers so that they can build a big stash of points and use those points to redeem them for their bucket list trips.
Terrific. I was excited to bring you on the show, both because I love you and am curious about what you do, but also because I have thought about doing this kind of thing, right? How to leverage what I'm already doing to get more of an impact especially when it comes to financial things and or travel. So I love that you can help people just cut the cost of travel and to do it ethically and to do it with ease. So I can't wait to dig into this. How did you find that this was your thing, that this was something that you could do and you would want to share this information with the world?
Yes, I love this question. So I can remember sitting alongside my dad when I was a little girl, and we would travel mostly domestically, but we usually took a family trip every year. And of course, I'm aging myself, but this is way before the internet. And so we would have travel brochures, and I was sitting on the floor of the living room covered in travel brochures. And I love to look at the hotels, and I love to think about what foods we would eat and all the new things that I was going to see. So I remember being very, very interested and also absorbing more information about that, than the average person. And I found so much joy in the anticipation of it, not only just the trip itself, but just looking forward to it and knowing that it was coming. And so I remember that from a really young age. And then I have really chosen to shape some of my most formative life experiences around travel. And I have found that the more that I can push myself out of my comfort zone, the more I grow. And we can certainly talk about, some of those stories. But I started a little side hustle. I worked actually for IBM for over 20 years. So I have a background in corporate and in management. And I had this side hustle as a travel agent. This was many years ago, and it was successful, but I just couldn't do it all. My boys were young. I was out on the soccer field with them and working a 40-hour corporate job, and it was just too much. And I think that, at that point in time, I just thought to myself, there's no way that I can make a career out of travel because of the age of the internet and people starting to book their own travel. And, little did I know that later I would discover Point, because for me, I started out planning our 20th anniversary trip, and I was laid up in the bed with COVID. And I just started thinking about, what's possible for us. And truthfully, Christine, I had encountered a huge health setback. And so I had lost my corporate job, and we were down to one income in my family. And so from the outside in, we had no business planning some huge blowout expensive trip. And at the same time, I just didn't want to settle. I was tired of settling. I didn't want one trip a year. I didn't want something mediocre. I wanted something amazing, to celebrate this anniversary with my husband. And so that's really when I started to discover this possibility of, oh, wait a minute, maybe I don't have to choose. Maybe I can still have this epic trip, but without ransacking my savings accounts and without jeopardizing my credit score. And so that's when I set a goal to go to Bali with my husband and to figure out how to do this for myself. And since then, there's been no looking back, bringing me up to date to helping others book over $300,000 in nearly free travel for their dream destination too.
So what you just described was in one of your life's most vulnerable times, you were able to decide, I'm going to think bigger, not smaller for me and my family, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this health setback that I had, so I sort of the day that the world shut down with COVID back in 2020, and my son, I found out schools were closing, and that same day I became ill with the virus. And we think it was COVID, but it was even before tests were available. And although I recovered from that, within about 2 weeks, I started to have this profound weakness in my body. And then it was progressing to the point that I could not stand up, and I was actually not able to swallow. And so at that point, it became a medical emergency because I had lost control over my body and over my movement. And so I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barre syndrome, which is an autoimmune condition. And so I was in a state of paralysis. I was so weak that I couldn't even zip a zipper or feed myself. And so I needed to undergo treatment at that time. And I found myself at the age of 40, and I was in a wheelchair and using a walker. And I felt like I'd aged overnight, become in the body of a 90-year-old woman. And so I set an audacious goal at that time that even though I was out of shape and overweight, that I was going to hike an ultra marathon with other survivors after I got better. And again, I couldn't stand up at the shower at this point in time. My family's like, yeah, okay, honey, sure. Like whatever makes you feel better, and setting this goal, because I'm the one who used to fix it during PE class. I mean, I really would not describe myself as an athlete, but it's in those times, I think, when I've been able to decide that I'm not going to settle and that I'm going to create an opportunity for adventure and for growth. And that's exactly what I did. And that experience to me and how it has enriched me is what drives me to help create those adventures for other women too.
Wow. You were effectively paralyzed for how long?
So it took me about 5 months to learn how to walk again. And so it wasn't just that I was so weak to walk, it's that literally my brain and my muscles had the nerves where your brain is communicating to your body, and those signals are getting to your muscles about how to move. Those nerve endings and sort of nerve trails had been damaged. And so I had to learn how to. My feet were like flippers. So it took about 5 months, and I did learn how to walk. And unfortunately, it returned 2 more times. So
Wow.
collectively, I spent over 12 months in really intense physical therapy. So I learned how to walk 3 different times, been on wheelchairs and walkers and cane and everything else. And it has made me stop and think about the importance of today, and making these desires and the love that I have, the curiosity that I have about travel and making connection with cultures and food and the loved ones that I travel with. That started to move up my priority list. And it went from just being down there somewhere of being important to being important and urgent.
Mm-hmm. What a beautiful story. I'm sorry you had to go through that kind of anguish, and the effort that you put in towards your great recovery. I'm seeing you vibrantly just returned from a great trip to Paris. And so clearly got your mobility back and are vibrant as ever. Can you, just before we move away from the illness part, I'm wondering how your mindset helped you to recover, because you've got such a positive, forward looking vibe and attitude about you. I'm wondering, how did you coach yourself into health again?
Well, thank you. I think that's such a beautiful question. And I think that, there were really, really rough moments. So don't get me wrong. I definitely was not happy and, necessarily seeing lessons in the moment. But I really believe that for me, it was so helpful to look back and realize that this experience had something to teach me in my life, something very profound in different ways. And so one thing that I chose to do, I'm just someone who loves to laugh. It's just like a core value. I love to laugh. My husband makes me laugh every day. And so I try to kind of disassociate myself from this illness and say, hey, this is happening to me, but this is not. And so I created a different name for myself. So I called myself Mildred. And Mildred was the 90-year-old who was on the walker and, walking around with her socks falling down and, all of those different challenges that I was going through. That was just Mildred. And Mildred was just here to stay for a little bit, but that really wasn't Kelly. And so I shared about it with others. I made others a part of my journey. And when I was able to actually sign up for the ultra marathon, I received a grant to be able to go out to Zion National Park in Utah and hike with other survivors. And so one thing that I chose to do was to dedicate every mile of that hike to someone who had helped me on my journey. And by doing that, in the times that I wanted to really give up, I mean, I remember the days of training where I had to do a 3-hour stair climb as part of the preparation. And if you have ever been in Georgia heat in the straight sun in August and wanted to climb stairs for 3 hours, I can tell you that it is no picnic. But knowing that others were involved and they were with me, it kept me so motivated because it made it larger than myself. And I think that gave it a lot more meaning. And so shortly before embarking on this 2-day, 45-mile hike, I sent out 45 calls, letters, messages, in-person hugs. And there was a lot of tears, happy tears on both the recipients and from me. And then in the canyon, I remember in Zion, there was a time when I was just really broken down. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue on. My body was so spent. And our leader just looked at me. She's like, Kelly, I mean, the only other option is an airlift. Do you want a helicopter? And I'm like, oh, I don't want. So one of my friends, I was wearing a little laminated list of all 45 of those people and what mile was for what person. And one of my friends who was hiking with me, she said, I want you to go through one by one, and I want to hear about every single one of these people. And before I knew it, we were at the bottom of the canyon.
Oh.
And it was like a mind over matter where it became about them and not so much about myself. And I think that is a lesson that I will continue to take with me.
Yeah, beautiful. I am thinking not only are you about positivity and looking forward, you are also really connected to making meaning and having meaning and being inspired by meaning. So I love that. I love that about you. And I love getting to know you right now even better. So let's shift now to the points. And did Bali happen with your husband? Maybe let's start there. And what was the learning curve for you in terms of getting good at managing points, keeping them organized, knowing what to do, getting your husband on board, all these things?
Yes. So I can tell you honestly that at first my husband was very skeptical. And I think that he was like very much afraid. He was like, what is this going to do to our credit score? What if this is irresponsible? And so I just honestly, I previously didn't know what was possible. I didn't know that people were sitting in these amazing first class seats, eating caviar and, with their airline provided pajamas and having all this experience and paying so little money out of pocket. I didn't know it until I started looking into it. And then I thought to myself, well, if they can do it, then certainly we must be able to do it too. And because of our financial situation, I knew that the only option was to go through with points. And so that became a matter of necessity. If I wanted this trip to happen in the luxurious, pampering way that I was dreaming of, it needed to be through points. And so I started to just absorb so much information, as much as I could. And I learned a little bit through trial and error, which has only then helped me to become a better teacher and a coach to the other women so that they can avoid some of the mistakes that I made early on in the beginning. But I started to put together this itinerary, and I knew that this was the furthest from home that we had ever been. We live north of Atlanta in the US, and we were traveling just about clear across the world, and it was going to be 24 hours on plane. And the thought of sitting in economy was not an option. I mean, that to me sounded really, really miserable. So the first priority for us was to bank enough points so that we could fly in the luxury of business class and first class and remove that barrier, right, of that discomfort and that stress of being sort of caged up, that there in economy. And so that was the first goal that we met, was to be able to book those flights. And I will never forget, it was like such a high to be able to find the seat and then to book it. And just the flights alone were about $26,000 in cash. And we paid $800 in award fee to book the tickets. And it was absolutely game changing to know that we could be in the front of the plane. And so we booked on Qatar Airways, which previous to this Points work I really wasn't aware of, but it's a Middle Eastern airline with this incredible service. And for me, getting my husband on board was showing him instead of telling him. I think that was the biggest thing. And so he was very skeptical. And then he sat in his pajamas in the seat and he looked at me. We were about maybe an hour into the flight. He turns and looks at me and he goes, "If it can be like this, I'll go anywhere in the world you want to go." And I was like, "Thank you. There we go." So we booked those flights first, and then we started to figure out, okay, if we accumulate some more points, how can we use those to book luxury hotels and standalone villas in Bali? And so we did fly on Qatar Airways there and back. I cannot explain what an amazing experience that was. And then in Bali, we had 12 nights in luxury hotels. Some of them included daily massage treatments for each of us. Some of them included meals, breakfast, incredible service. And they were some of the most beautiful locations I've ever seen in my life. I never thought I would be able to stay in places like that. And even more than that, I will remember the connections and the cultural experiences that we had while in Bali. We hiked to the top of a mountain to watch the sunrise across the caldera. We visited a 1,500-year-old water temple. We met with a Balinese priestess and her family, and they took us through a water purification ceremony. We took cooking classes. We had, I think, 8 spa treatments each. Like it was so pampering. And that really kicked it off for us of getting the bug and seeing what was possible. And then now my husband, anytime we go anywhere, we get to the cash register and he turns to me and goes, "What card should I use?" and then I know I've got him on board.
He's a great student. You're a great teacher. I love that. I love the story. And it was really doing it right from the get-go, that it was your intention. I love that it started with your very clear intention that it doesn't really matter what my current circumstance is. I can create this vision and make it happen. Speaking of beginning of the year kind of energy, that is really life energy. That's saying, yeah, if somebody else can do it, I can certainly do it too. And I love that. Now, at what point did you decide I'm going to teach other people about this? And what goes into that?
Yes. Well, because this is my zone of genius, I am a huge nerd about it. And so if you start asking me questions, you could get trapped in a corner with me at a cocktail party and wish that maybe you had not asked. And it's because I nerd out over all the details at a level that most people would not. And because I am so interested in it and so passionate about it, I absorb a lot of information, more so than the average person. And so I was naturally excited to tell everybody around me what I was doing, probably to the point that they were sick of hearing about it. And then I thought to myself, gosh, I am loving this so much. I wonder, can I do this for other people? Because it was one thing to have success on my own. It's another to be able to help another person achieve success. Mm-hmm. So I approached 3 families and I said, "Hey, I'll just do this for you at no charge. Do you have a trip, a goal that you want to visit, a place on your bucket list? And would you be willing to try points?" And so one of those families wanted to go to Costa Rica. They've got 2 young children. And so within 4 months, they had built enough points for a luxury family vacation to Costa Rica. And they spent time inland in the rainforest. Their kids love animals, so they were seeing sloths and, they're standing there with binoculars in the rainforest. And then they spent time on the coastline, this beautiful beach and the Hyatt Andaz Hotel there, which is incredible property. And so they was working and they caught the bug. And then another family wanted to fly in business class to New Zealand. And so we made that happen for them with their points. And so then I could see that it was working for other people. And it was just a matter of, how do I take this topic that can be very overwhelming for a lot of women, and how can I distill it down to a system not only that they can learn it in a course, but then they're getting the one-on-one support from me in a group setting so that they feel that they can ask their questions and they can move past any of their roadblocks and be able to build their skills and invest in their skill to be able to not only take their first trip, because nobody ever wants to just stop at one. And I've never had somebody tell me, well, this was great, I'm done now. Actually, never. So they're always thinking about that next trip. So then it becomes really learning those skills so that they can get that return on investment trip after trip after trip.
I love it. I love how you use the word contagious, because as soon as you spoke about the Costa Rica trip, I was thinking, well, I could go to Costa Rica, right? And I'm wondering just how many of our listeners are thinking the same thing. All of a sudden, your mind is opening to, well, I might want to do that exact thing myself. So I love that. I'm looking forward to hearing about the growth of your business as you teach women about doing this successfully and then doing it on repeat. And I love that it's a passion of yours. It's your zone of genius, that you have the travel background. I know you've mentioned when we met in the end of last year, you've got a bunch of trips planned for yourself. Do you want to review a few of them for our audience just to get people's minds going a little bit more?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked that, because one of the biggest misconceptions that I hear from midlife women that I work with is that they're not thinking big enough. They're just thinking too small. And it's not because they're doing anything wrong, because I used to do the same thing. I used to think that how I could travel using cash, maybe how I would always travel, or that I would have to wait until something external happened to me in the future. Like, well, maybe I'll save enough when I retire and then I'll be able to do that. Right. So it's always at some point in the future. But, now using points, I've been able to take those one day, someday type dream trips and make them happen now. And so we just returned. So I've got two boys that are age 20 and 17. And we surprised them on Christmas morning with business class tickets for the whole family to fly to Paris. And it was incredible. It was so much fun. It was the first time that all four of us had been in a lie flat luxury seat, and they were out of their mind. Like they were being served champagne, which was novel enough, but then they were able to lie down. We all arrived so much more refreshed than we would have. And the entire experience was so elevated for everyone. And so we had an incredible trip. We booked a photo session in front of the Eiffel Tower. We had an amazing trip to the Louvre. We did a food tour. We did a lot of eating and a lot of shopping. And then we went to Bruges, Belgium by train. It is a gorgeous, well-preserved, smaller, lesser-known city in Belgium. Highly recommend it. And then we took a train to Amsterdam and flew back. And then in March, I'm taking my mom and my sister. So they jumped on the Point bandwagon. My mom was my most critical client, by the way, at first. But we are all flying in business class to Madrid, and we're going to spend a week in Spain together. Then they fly home, and my dear friend Suze is going to fly over, and she and I are staying the entire week on Point in Portugal at some beautiful locations there. And then I currently have a trip booked end of May for my son's graduation to see Machu Picchu. So the four of us are going to Peru. And then the last big trip of the year with my husband, we're going to have an empty nesters blowout trip. And we're going to be going to Japan in October. So, and I will have some domestic trips and some business travel mixed in where I also use points. But I went from booking one trip a year with cash to last year booking $70,000 in cash value with points. So quite, a story for me. And my students go at their own pace, right? Not everybody wants to travel that much. So whatever your goals are, that is what I think makes a good coach, is that, I will meet you where you are, right? With what your goals are, and then help you create a responsible credit card strategy that aligns with your existing household spending that you're already doing. And I think that's really the biggest breakthrough that in the message that I want to get out is that it's not that you don't have the budget to travel or that you don't have the money. It's that you may not be actually making the money you already spend work for you and fuel your travel dreams.
This is just exciting, eye-opening, refreshing, so uplifting. I love this. I love this for you. I love this for your client. And I know you are just about ready to put on a live event to kind of explain this to people, not just to this audience, but to many, many more women in midlife. Can you tell us a little bit about that event? And we'll let people know how to get in there.
Absolutely. I'm so excited about this. So it's a 1 hour live free masterclass and it's virtual. So it's going to be at the end of the month. And I'm being purposefully vague about that because I'm going to tell you how to get the details of that. But let's say you're listening and it's after January, maybe it's in February. You can follow the same process to get to me, but you can go to Instagram. I'm at the Point Maven and just DM me waitlist. And I will get you all the details on how to join that way. And during that 1 hour, you're going to discover the secrets that my students are using in 2025 to save 90% on their dream travel. And it's going to be focused on some of the challenges and the beliefs and the experiences that midlife women have in common and some of the goals and the struggles that I hear over and over. And you're going to discover those secrets so that you can get started on your journey to achieve your bucket list too.
I love this. This is also just such a message of thinking bigger for yourself, not being overwhelmed by your own thoughts and images of a brighter and more fun and travel-based future, and that you have or you can have the wherewithal to do this all yourself with expert support, but that all of this is really available to you when you're ready. And I love that message. Of course, I share that same belief and I try to promote the same kind of energy. And it really is saying, let's not put off the things that are really going to change us, that are really going to create the memories with our families, develop our own sense of who we are in this life. Nothing more important. Can you share maybe one story of a client? Any one of your favorite stories of what happened in their life to their personality, to their view of living? I'd love to hear that.
Yes, absolutely. So it was a client that I actually just spoke with yesterday, but this client, Rebecca, so she is a midlife woman who is single at this time. She's divorced and she has a son who's going to be graduating from high school. And it was her dream to take them on an epic trip to Asia, just her and her son. And I love this story because I do work with lots of women who are embarking on a new chapter after a divorce or after other life events. As we get to this stage in life, we are accumulating so many different experiences. We have evolved many times in the phases of our life. And many women are asking different questions. And so Rebecca started asking, how is this possible? This is what I want. How do I make it happen? And I'm so glad that she had the courage to ask those questions. And so what we did was we created a responsible strategy, even though she's a single income earner. She's not the only one I work with. There are lots of women that are single income and can still do this. So she opened up a few strategic credit cards. We went through the recommendation according to what she already spent in her household. And instead of putting those expenses on a debit card, let's say, she placed them on a credit card, which she paid it off every month, just like a debit card. So she didn't incur any interest and her credit score actually went up, which is the common experience. And it's actually counter to what people think. So fast forward to now is that Rebecca has business and first class flights both ways visiting Thailand and Singapore with her son for this epic adventure for the two of them. And so they are going to be having access to one of the world's finest first-class lounges where you can even reserve your own jacuzzi tub on your layover at the airport. They're slinging like few $100 bottles of champagne. And I mean, it's just literally, I remember I felt like, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, that we were sitting next to an oil sultan in first class. And so Rebecca can now she's not a multimillionaire. She's a regular woman, but because she has followed these strategies, she's creating extraordinary opportunity for her and her son. So, and then now we talked about that contagiousness of not wanting to stop. So now she's thinking bigger and she wants to climb Mount Kilimanjaro for her 50th. And she's much more fit than I am. So, that's more power to her. But we're going to be figuring out her next phase of her points travel is going to be getting to Africa and how we can create something epic for her then too.
This is great. I just feel like saying mic drop. Because you brought all the entertainment, all the positivity, all the inspiration for people who are interested in adding travel to their lives to really make it happen and to make 2025 the year to begin that process. So you can DM Kelly on Instagram at the Points Maven. And we've also created a link for you that you can do it through the podcast as well. So go to maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com/travel. Again, it's maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com/travel for all the details on Kelly's upcoming live masterclass. It's going to be great. I'm going to be there. I will see you all there. Anybody who wants to join us, please feel free. So Kelly, any last words before we wrap up?
Christine, I just want to thank you for your warmth that you bring to me and your authenticity, not only to me, but what you bring to your audience in every episode. And it has been such an honor and a privilege to be with you and for each of you listening. And I am rooting for you. More is possible for you. If it is your desire to get out there and see the world, I just encourage you to start asking different questions and, come join us and find out how this could potentially work for you to unlock travel in new ways that you may have never thought were possible.
Let's do it. All right. 2025 is looking better and better. Thank you, Kelly. Good luck with the live masterclass. Enjoy the travel. I know you will. And everyone, thank you so much for sharing in this time with me and Kelly. I will see you next week when the next episode drops. I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Make Time for Success podcast. If you enjoyed what you've heard, you can subscribe to make sure you get notified of upcoming episodes. You can also visit our website, maketimeforsuccesspodcast.com, for past episodes, show notes, and all the resources we mention on the show. Feel free to connect with me over on Instagram too. You can find me there under the name Procrastination Coach. Send me a DM and let me know what your thoughts are about the episodes you've been listening to. And let me know any topics that you might like me to talk about on the show. I'd love to hear all about how you're making time for success. Talk to you soon.